After it's over, I have to press this, no? Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Um, I'm Dr. Misha, Assistant Professor in the Department of Community Medicine, Osmania Medical College. So today the topic for you all is food adulteration and food fortification. This is very important in the context of India because over here there are many nutritional problems. In fact, nutritional problems are the biggest problems that we have in India, such as deficiencies, adulteration. So many of the food get adulterated. So what is the definition of adulteration and what are the laws? That is one thing that we will see, and also how foods can be fortified and what is the meaning of fortification. We are going to explore now. Okay, so firstly, what is the definition of food fortification? It is reinforcing the usual dietary intake of nutrients with additional supplies to prevent or control some nutritional disorders. This is the meaning of this is the definition of food fortification. Basically, you're reinforcing the available foods. To put it in simple words, you will take what is normally commonly consumed and you will make it more nutritious by adding extra nutrients to it, which are not normally present in that food, like iodization of salt. Iodine is not normally there, part of normal salt, that is NaCl, but you will add iodine to in order to prevent endemic goiters, etc. So this is a very famous example. So please remember that whenever the topic of food fortification comes up, the example of iodization of salt is something that you have to always remember. Then WHO has defined food fortification as the process whereby nutrients are added to foods to maintain or improve the quality of the diet of a group or a community or population. So this is the WHO definition of food fortification. It is the process whereby you are adding nutrients to foods in order to improve the health status of a population. And for that you have to also know what is the population deficient in. Only then you can add that particular nutrient. Examples: iodization of salt for combating the problem of endemic goiter. Um, this is a very famous example. You all should know this, and also it is government of India has considered it as a criminal thing to make salt without iodizing it. I'm talking about normal salt, not rock salt. Normal salt has to be iodized because there is a rapid problem of endemic goiter, which is highly preventable if iodine is supplied to the population. And obviously, we normally in a country like India, where education levels are poor, if we educate them and tell them to take iodine tablets or consume iodine rich foods, they will not do it. So that is why we have to iodize salt, because salt is consumed by everyone. And then next, food fortification. The examples: vanaspati and milk, vitamin A and D can be added to these. Additionally, other than this, NIN, that is National Institute of Nutrition, is there in Hyderabad. You all should know. And National Institute of Nutrition has also conducted research, and also field level implementation is happening, wherein rice is fortified with iron. So iron fortification with rice is also something that is being done. So that is another example of fortification. So you cannot fortify everything. You have to fortify. There are only some food articles that are suitable for fortification. So what food articles will you fortify? So this is something that you all should know, that there are certain criteria for any food to act as a vehicle for fortification. It is called as a vehicle. So the vehicle to be fortified must be consumed consistently as part of regular daily diet by relevant sections of the population or by the total population. That is, it should be consumed daily. Obviously, if you are going to consume it like once in a while, uh, there is no sense in fortifying it. Like if you fortify something like say chana dal, not everyone consumes it, and definitely you will not consume it every day. Or if you it should be something that's affordable, that you eat daily, like salt, like rice. So if you that is why it should be consistently part of regular diet. Only then that deficiency can be addressed. Then the amount of nutrient added must also provide an effective supplement for low consumers of the vehicle without contributing a hazardous excess to the high consumers. That means if you eat salt less, you should not become iodine deficient, and if you are eating salt more, you should not have iodine toxicity. So both extremes. So if you eat less or more, you should have a consistent supply which will not cause either deficiency or excess respectively. Okay, and then addition of the nutrient must not cause it to undergo any change in taste, smell, appearance, consistency. Obviously, if you are going to provide blue color salt to populations, they will be suspicious, and with the change in taste they will reject it. So no, the appearance, the taste, the consistency of it, it should not change, because you have added. It should be almost as if there is no difference between normal salt and iodized salt. Such a status should be achieved, whereby addition of it will not alter its properties. Then cost of fortification must not raise the cost of the food beyond the reach of people. So you have fortified it, you have met all criteria, but it's very expensive. Then also it is no use. It should be affordable. Fortification cost also must be affordable. Then, so these are all about food fortification. Though it's a small topic, it's a very important topic. Please remember, and please remember that this topic of iodization of salt is extremely important. Whenever you talk about food fortification, one example that should flow out of your mouth first should be iodization of salt. Okay, because it has played a very significant, very effective role for us for endemic goiter. India was endemic to goiter, and mental retardation, etc., also happened because of iodine deficiency. All of that was able to be prevented because of this one measure. So you have to be thorough, you have to know this. And then coming to food adulteration, what is the meaning of food adulteration? So the definition is it consists of a large number of practices, that is mixing, substitution, concealing the quality, putting up decomposed foods for sale, misbranding, and giving false labels or addition of toxins. So to put it in simple words, it means you are tampering the quality of the food by various methods like this. By these examples, we are mixing something else, or you're removing it and substituting something, or you're putting up decomposed food for sale, or you're selling something cheaper but you're branding it wrong and you're saying that I'm giving superior quality, or you have added toxins. All of these are usually done for monetary benefits. uh, so obviously if you are going to use something substandard, it will cost less for the manufacturer, but you are putting the label of the superior product and gaining money. That is the meaning of food adulteration. This is a penal offense. It is punishable under law. Then what are the disadvantages? There are two types of disadvantages. Firstly, the consumer is paying more for a lower quality product. Then next is some forms of adulteration are actually injurious to health. And they can even cause death. For example, adulteration of mustard oil with argemony oil that causes endemic dropsy, and adulteration of edible oil with tricresin phosphate which causes paralysis or death. So these are some examples where it is actually can cause even death and it cause injury to the health. So these are injurious forms of adulteration. So on one hand, money, it's a loss of money for him, for the consumer, and it's also loss of health. Then what is the adulteration? Adulteration, some of the common examples are cereal. You all know that when you eat rice, you all must have had some pieces of stone. So that is one common example. Pulses with kesari dal, Bengal gram flour with starch powder or maize flour, which is cheaper than Bengal gram flour. Then ghee with vegetable oil, animal fat, and sweet potato, milk with water, tea with used tea leaves, pepper with papaya seeds, clove with clove after extraction, dhania with sawdust or horse dung, red chili powder with sawdust or powdered red brick powder, honey with sugar and water, turmeric with yellow soil. Also sawdust is used for turmeric also. So this is a very important table. And also when you are given an question about to write an answer about food adulteration, you have to mention some of these examples of adulteration of foods. So you should remember at least 4 or 5 of them. Pick some easy ones and but remember them. You have to quote examples like cereals with pieces of stone. That's an easy example. Milk with water is an easy example. Honey with sugar and water. That is easy. Red chili powder with red brick powder. That is also easy. Okay, like this, pick some 4 or 5 that are easy for you and remember them. Ghee with animal fat. So a lot of people are what they are doing is people who sell like these small roadside shops for maximizing their profit. Ghee as well as oil. What they are using is they will melt animal fat like chicken fat or goat fat. They'll melt and they will prepare their foods using that only, and it will look like oil only when you melt these fats. So for the roadside dosas and chips, etc., they use this. It is cheaply available, but it is not at all healthy. It is highly saturated fat only, and more trans fats. They'll reuse it like anything. So all of this will compromise the health. So you pick whatever 4 or 5 examples you can remember easily, but always you should know these some at least some examples about adulteration of foodstuffs. That Prevention of Food Adulteration Act, it is enacted by the Indian Parliament in 1954 with the objective of ensuring pure and wholesome food to the consumers and to protect them from fraudulent and deceptive trade practices. So, Indian government in 1954, that was just after independence, we had to make this law to prevent food adulteration. Then what are the provisions? This may seem like a big slide, but it's actually very easy. I'll tell you easy way to remember it. There are two types of punishments. One is punishment for simple adulteration, like mixing water with milk. It will not cause any, it's not cause any grievous injury or not cause any death or anything, but it is wrong. You're cheating the customer. So provision for this is little less compared to grievous hurt. So what is the provision is 6 months imprisonment and minimum fine of 1,000 rupees under this act for proven adulteration. If it is grievous in nature, it has caused injury or death, it can be punishable up to five, not less than 5,000 rupees, and up to life. Anywhere till life imprisonment they can get. Like recently there was an example where some there were very grievous health complications among school children in Madhya Pradesh. Yeah, I think Madhya Pradesh only, where midday meals were adulterated. So because of that, what happened was children were falling sick, and later a large group of children were falling sick to such grievous. It caused a health problem to them, and they had to miss school and get admitted in the hospital and all. So this will all be treated as a grievous hurt, and in some of I think 1 or 2 children died also. So this will all be treated, and it can the punishment for such things can be life imprisonment also. And this program has been amended in 1986, where all voluntary organizations can are also empowered to take samples of food. If some NGO or something suspects that you are there is some problem in this school or Anganwadi center or restaurant even, they're supplying fraudulent and foods that are dangerous to the health, they can take action and they can take samples, and they can also independently, though they are not directly consumers, they can also independently make use of the provisions of this act. Then the rules are framed, which are revised from time to time by an expert body called as Central Committee of Food Standards, which is constituted by the central government under the provisions of this act. A chain of food laboratories and there are a chain of food laboratories, and there are that is food laboratories are there throughout the country. In every city they'll be there, but for 4 regions, north, south, east, west, there are 4 appellate food laboratories. That is appellate means their report is considered as final, and it is considered as like the final call on this. There's nothing superior to them. So these are located in each region. So for the north it is Ghaziabad in near Delhi, and for the south it is Mysore. For east it is in Kolkata, and for the west it is in Pune. So these are the 4 central food laboratories whose report is considered final. Then Directorate General of Health Services organizes in-service training program for different functionaries responsible for the implementation of the Act. Food inspectors, analysts, and senior officers concerned with implementation are also provided training. So constant in-service training is very important. Reason why in-service training is important is because uh, um, every time it will change. Whatever are the qualities that will they will whatever are the guidelines, new guidelines, better guidelines keep coming. So you have to constantly update who are the different functionaries. So that's why many in-service trainings are also being conducted by this Directorate General of Health Services. Then there are certain standards at international level. It is called Codex Alimentarius. There is one Codex Alimentarius Commission, and this is a principal organization among FAO. It looks like FAQ. Sorry for that. It is actually FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization, which is WHO food standards. It's part of WHO food standards program. It formulates food standards for the international market, and our food standards are based on WHO FAO's food standards only. So this is Codex Alimentarius at international level. Then based on this we have our PFA, that is Prevention of Food Adulteration Act, which is established and it is revised from, it was established in 1954. I have already, we have discussed it in this slide. This is nothing but Prevention of Food Adulteration Act, and from time to time Committee of Food Standards will institute changes that are required, and the purpose of Prevention of Food Adulteration Standards is to maintain a minimum quality of foodstuffs to be attained under Indian conditions. Whatever Codex Alimentarius does, it is for international condition, but our needs are specific. Our foodstuffs are also unique. So for that, standards will be given by PFA. So everybody has to adhere to the PFA standards. So next is the AgMark standards. AgMark and BIS. Please remember, AgMark and BIS are over and above the PFA standards. Even if you don't have AgMark and BIS, it is not nothing serious about it. But PFA standards should definitely be adhered. But then why, if they are not mandatory, why are they there? This is just to assure the customers of extra quality that the manufacturer or the producer is taking over and above the PFA standards. Okay, so AgMark standards, they are set by Directorate of Marketing and Inspection of Government of India, and AgMark gives customers an assurance of quality in accordance with standards laid down. And next is Bureau of Indian Standards. Bureau of Indian Standards, you must have noticed the ISI mark on different articles. It's a guarantee of good quality in assurance with the standards prescribed by Bureau of Indian Standards. Even water also, you must have seen that ISI mark will be there. So AgMark and ISI standards are not mandatory, as I've already said. They are purely voluntary. They express degree of excellence above the PFA standards. And other than this, I also want to tell briefly about FSSAI, that is Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. This is also very important. It's a statutory body in India. Statutory means it has come into existence because of a law. A law will come into force and it will tell that you have to form such a body which will do this function. Only then it has come into existence. So you should know about that also. It is under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and it was established in 2006, and it is responsible for protecting and promoting public health through like through supervision and regulation of food safety. So this headquartered in Delhi, and there also they have regional offices in South Zone, North Zone, South it's Chennai, and East it's in Kolkata, and West it's in Mumbai. So like that you have many regional offices as well, but headquarters is in Delhi. So please know about this as well, and this also grants licenses to restaurants and food manufacturers. Food Safety and Standards Authority of India is also something that you all should be aware of. I have not included the slides because it is not there in Park, but that does not mean that it's not important. It is it's a current topic, it's very important topic, and it is something you all should know. You go through the logo also of FSSAI, you'll see in blue it will be written on top, and on the words will be written, and on top and down you have on top one orange line and down one green line, like the Indian flag, it will be written. So FSSAI also, please go through. It's called Food Safety and Standards Authority of India under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Coming to the next slide, National Nutrition Policies 1993. So there are two types of intervention, directly how to improve the nutritional status of different groups, and indirectly how to improve. All methods need not be via health. There are other methods also which we'll see. So direct methods is by expanding safety net. That is, you will bring more and more people into universal immunization program, oral rehydration therapy, ICDS, integrated child development services, etc. So they will have a considerable impact on child survival and extreme forms of malnutrition. So you all already must know the infection malnutrition cycle. That is, infection will cause malnutrition, malnutrition will again cause infection because of lowered immunity. So this is national nutrition policy. Under national nutrition policy, this immunization program also will there is a more emphasis on them to break that infection malnutrition cycle. That's why for various diseases we give immunization. Also, vitamin A deficiency is also addressed by giving vitamin A immunization. Then improving the growth monitoring, you should regularly monitor growth by a growth chart for 0 to 3 years, and early interventions can be taken. Then reaching adolescent girls through ICDS. So adolescent girls health condition will affect the condition of the newborn. So it's important to monitor that. Then ensuring better coverage of expectant mothers in order to reduce incidence of low birth weight babies. So that's an obvious thing. And fortification of foods I have already discussed. Popularization of low cost nutritious food, and control of micronutrient deficiencies among vulnerable groups. So now it is fashion to eat all these latest foods like broccolis and avocados and all. No need. If we can popularize our own low cost nutritious foods, it is beneficial economically and also health wise. Like our own spinach, that is palak, and amla, lemon, and all green nutrition, like our green leafy vegetables, what we say, chukakura, totokura, etc. These are all very high green leafy vegetables that are highly rich in various nutrients, and they don't cost much. For 5 rupees, 10 rupees also, these are procurable by the family. So you'll popularize them as opposed to these other foods that cost hundreds of rupees, avocados and all. That's why we should popularize low cost nutritious foods. Um, and indirect policy measures, that is long term institutional and structural changes need to be there. Instead of directly giving for this thing, like nutritious foods, these direct methods that directly affect the food. So what are the indirect measures? So before going to the indirect measures, you need to know that per person per capita you need 215 kgs per year of food grain. That much of food security must be attained. Okay, so per person we need 215 kgs per year of food grain. So that needs to be achieved. So first of all, you can fortify the food, you can prevent adulteration, but at the end of the day, food should be available, no? So because of for that, we need to make this much food available. So how we are going to do it? You will improve the dietary pattern. That is production. More production, that is, you will take barren lands, how to convert barren lands into agricultural lands, and many methods to incentivize farmers to grow these local nutritious foods. Many people are switching to horticultural crops because they give more money. So as opposed to rice and all, ragi, these give less return as opposed to horticulture, like you grow exotic fruits and vegetable like flowers and all. If you do that, then it will affect food security. So you need to incentivize production also, and you will improve the purchasing power of urban and rural areas, and improve the food distribution system. Food distribution system is nothing but our ration card system. Will make sure that food distribution is that system is efficient, and you will improve the purchasing power of rural and urban areas, urban poor. Then land reforms, I've already told you how you can convert barren lands into productive lands, and how you can make sure that crops that are highly nutritious are incentivized to be grown. These are some of the land reform measures. And then next is health and family welfare, basic health and nutrition knowledge, prevention of food adulteration, nutritional surveillance, and monitoring nutrition programs. I've already discussed most of this. Um, and under surveillance, you will constantly keep uh, uh, reviewing, and you will constantly keep screening for any health problems that are newly emerging, so that in the initial stages itself you can institute what you call curative measures. Like you will see that in certain populations, iron deficiency anemia is gravely increasing. So there only via surveillance, if you come to know that, early treatment it can be instituted. Then research into various fields of nutrition, they are required. Like I have already given you an example where NIN, National Institute of Nutrition, is fortifying rice with iron. So that is also a product of research only. After research only, you will come to know that rice is a good vehicle to be for fortification. With regard to iron, that is, like I said, taste should not change and quality should not change, cost should not change. All of this will depend on good research and equal remuneration for women. So if a woman is empowered, then the money that she makes will be used for the family. Usually the money that a woman earns will be used for the family. If a man gets money, he may use it for some other outside you know good car and alcohol and cigarettes, etc. But for women, her child is her immediate concern. I'm not saying all men are like that, but rural areas, that problem is still there, where women don't have an equal status, and women and children are sufferers. So if you make sure that women are empowered and women have this equal remuneration, then uh, there's a more chance for the child's nutrition status also to improve. Then communication through established media for implementation of nutrition policy. You may have all these things, but if the population don't know about it, then again it is, they don't know what are their rights with regard to adulterated food. All those children who suffered, if their parents don't know that they have legal recourse, the children that suffered in the midday meals program, if if their parents are unaware that they can take legal measures to prevent such and also to get compensation, then there is no use. These lawbreakers will continue to exist, taking advantage of the lack of knowledge for the populations. So that is why you need to, effective communication needs to be there. Then minimum wage administration also must be there, so that food becomes available to these populations. Then community participation, community also need to participate in their own health. Community participation is very important. Mm and education, etc. Community education and literacy program for women, also for everyone, not just for women, for everyone. Health of everyone is important. So but with regard to women, because it affects the child's health, that is why education and literacy of women is more important. Then lastly, improvement of the status of women. So usually these are the ones that take care of children, and they are the ones that cook, etc. So their knowledge, improving their knowledge and their status will have a more of a direct impact on the health of the child and also the family. So that's it with today. So thank you very much. And before that, please. So what have you seen today? We have seen about food for fortification, examples, definition, and what are the vehicles that are suitable, and then about food adulteration, what is the definition, what are the acts, what are the examples, that table, how each food is adulterated. And then we have seen about various licensing bodies like Codex Alimentarius at international level, BIS and AGMARC at Indian level. Also I've told you about foods, FSSAI, Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. And we have seen various interventions that are available at various levels for improving the food status, of nutritional status of children, of the population. So this is a very important topic, because like I said, deficiencies and India have always been very good friends for a long time. We need to break that friendship, and we need to see that no more children and families suffer from deficiencies, and that's our collective responsibility. So please be thorough, go back and read and revise, and I hope all of you have paid attention to the class. Thank you very much.